Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday, April 14th, 2025. Out of the matrix into prime reality. And that couldn't be more of a fitting tagline for today's subject, as we are talking about not just a day that changed the world forever, but how it is changing right now, right in front of our eyes. I want to welcome everyone on X, Rumble, and YouTube. I encourage you to share this with your friends and family. I think this is highly important, significant, and it is in the top five, top three most important subjects of our time, not talked about nearly enough. Um, we are, I believe, at the beginning, or maybe in the beginning, and maybe even a little upward on an exponential curve, on a vertical line up, where the predictability for us of what's to come is harder and harder. We can start to imagine what will happen technologically. The exact impact is almost impossible to predict. We have a little bit of hindsight, advantage here, and that's always the case in history, that you can much easier decipher the significance of a moment in time in hindsight than you can do it at the time. However, all this gathering of information should help us to be fully anchored in the present and realize what is really happening. And that's why we have to look back to November 30th, 2022. One of the most significant days in recent history, for sure. Probably as we move forward, it's going to turn into one of the most significant days in history, period. And that was when OpenAI launched ChatGPT, which wasn't the first large language model by a long shot, but it was the first one that was public facing, which meant that on November 30th, everybody received access to ChatGPT, the chatbot by OpenAI. And the explosion and the adaptation was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. So they launched at the end of November, and by January, a couple months later, they had an estimated 100 million users, the fastest growing consumer application in history. But it isn't just that people started using it. We're gonna discover why this day is truly so significant as we move forward. It hit 1 million users in 5 days. Today, probably we're looking at 200 million plus. This is the latest figure as of late 2024. Used in every industry, 185 countries. But here's the most important piece of this information: billions of interactions daily. Why does that matter? Before you had a public facing AI like this, a large language model, all the training that it was receiving from indirect input or training input in sort of closed environment, right? When they trained it in the lab, yes. When it was deployed to the internet to gather the data, it was still basically observing what was happening. Now, it was the receiving and giving end in a conversation. It was the partner to millions of people, hundreds of millions now, and to billions of prompts and conversations. Now, what that did is it accelerated and we have lost camera. My apologies here. Let's see if we can turn this on again. This is not the right one. Here we go. Here we go. Lost camera, lost perspective, lost everything, working on it. Sorry, my friends. This is sort of when you don't have AI run your cameras, what happens? What started happening was, and is happening, is that the AI and the large language models can train themselves so fast now. They can exponentially grow in their comprehension of data, and the fine tuning is so incredibly fast. But what is really happening is that we're now at the stage where the AI is training new AI, is training new AI, is coding, and we're, I believe, in a period where even the experts simply can't truly know and don't know what's happening, and their opinions differ. So if you think about it, when the one of the big disruptions in the industrial revolution was the automobile, right? It was a massive disruption. How with the automobile, however, while people couldn't exactly predict what what it was going all to replace and how it's going to impact society fully, they could at least fairly simply understand the technology of the automobile, because when you spent 5 minutes in a car, you knew what it was capable of doing, and there wasn't a huge like learning curve in that sense. You saw it, you felt it. It can accelerate, it can brake, it can steer, it provides a roof later, and so forth. The problem here is that with the AI, not even the people who develop it, in other words, not even the engineers who develop the car, the engineers that develop the AI simply don't know anymore what it is capable of and what it will be capable of. And imagine if it is, let's say it's 1995, it's sort of early stages of the internet. I mean, it was earlier, but 1995 seems to be a year, 94, 95, where people started really noticing more and some started using it. Imagine it's 1995 and you're part of the crowd that says, yeah, well, that's just computer stuff. That's people like interaction. It's not gonna be there, but it's not gonna be huge. And then we had the dot-com bubble, and everybody's like, "Oh, this might be the sort of the ceiling for the internet." We are in a similar position. However, the speed is a millionfold faster. What took decades with the general internet to reach the public and reach sort of the more mature people who aren't early adopters and stuff like that, this is now in such a fast acceleration curve that we can't wrap our minds around it. And where experts are literally arguing over whether we have actually maybe already passed the threshold of singularity, at least in some sense of the definition. We're going to get into those experts and what they're saying in a minute here. Let us just move on here. Here was the explosion of AI after 2022. The competitors came up, open source tools came up. Right now, AI can analyze your images. It can create pretty much any image you give it from a text prompt. It can create any video you give it from a text prompt. The From the early AI image creation just a few short years ago to right now, it's like a different galaxy. That's how fast it has evolved. And it has trained itself mostly. Yes, there was training in the labs, but mostly it's trained itself. Where people were joking, oh, AI is never going to replace a designer because look, it's creating 6-finger hands and stuff like that. That's not happening anymore. It's now almost indistinguishable to the naked eye, uh, whether this is a photo created by AI or it was taken by a human being. So we're just exploding, and right now, and this is the number is hard to pin down, but there's over 10,000 AI tools that exist for everything you could possibly imagine, from writing to designing, from finance, legal, medicine. I mean, and it's because people have access to the architecture, because everyone, including you, could go online and use open source AI to create another AI that is specialized on a certain set of knowledge and data. You can now create specific AIs. Let's say you're a carpenter or whatever. You want to create an AI that focuses on that. You can do that within maybe hours, days tops. And so you see how the exponentiality is already happening. AI now creates music, it creates full movies, it creates whatever you really wanted to create. And there's almost no rails, no boundaries, no nothing. This cannot be overestimated what that means for the next months and years. And that's why we have to not just wrap our minds around it, but talk about it as we're going into, and maybe are already in it, where it is indistinguishable unless you really tune in. And how can you tune in 24/7? How can you really be so present in every single moment that you know whether you are in reality or artificial reality? It's almost impossible at this point. Millions of pages of content produced every day. It writes emails, it writes essays. It's an autoresponder. It is embedded into every customer service application that is out there. It is, like I say, almost at the point where the really good ones, you can't tell that you're chatting with an AI. Sometimes you might be able to, but honestly, if you have a fine-tuned version of ChatGPT on the other end, you won't be able to really tell it. Maybe, but most people won't. Most people are way too hypnotized and frankly lack the will to think about things like that. From social media posts to marketing to news articles, and really, we're going to see this here, which might shock a lot of people. But if you look at what it costs and what it took, and we know this, Christine and I have been, doing a lot of projects in the last 15, 20 years. And so we know how long it took to create a graphic or hire something out or create a website. For our first professional website that we did together, and we hired someone who did back then video and whatnot. I think it was 15 or 20 grand that we spent on that website. That website now is created for free in a few minutes. A blog post before AI took about 8 hours. You'd have to research, you would have to find the facts and fact search, and now people are using AI and it takes them 10 minutes maybe. It used to cost, if you hired it out, that you wanted someone to write for your blog, it would cost a lot of money. Now you have a subscription to Grok or ChatGPT or one of the other tools, and it's like $20 and it's unlimited. And you can edit as much as you want to, and it's there. I'm not talking about quality. I'm not talking about truth. I'm not talking about any of it. I'm just talking about content itself. Video editing. We have in our team a professional video editor, Chris. She's a human being. She sits down and she takes hours to create beautiful visuals and make it all. The truth is, AI can do that. Maybe not to the point exactly that we would want it to, but it can. And it is a subscription, once again, maybe $20 a month, and an editor literally goes through it, creates whatever you want it to, puts the subtitles on there and everything else. It's done. Like I said, website created in minutes. You won't believe what kind of website creators are out there. Or let's go bigger, apps. We were looking into creating our own inspired app just a few short years ago, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars, and then maintaining the infrastructure and having the quality control and everything you would need just wasn't feasible at the time. Now an app can be developed in a few hours, basically free, and it's an app that feels and looks like the big ones, like the big tech apps. These are just a few examples of what is happening. Now, I want you to just for a moment really sense the disruption of everything, of absolutely everything, what that truly means, and what we're looking at, because this is still linear. In some ways, we can still imagine that. We can't imagine what happens and what is happening right now when the AI creates new AI and codes new code, and that code codes new code. And everybody's doing it. Hundreds of millions of people are doing it. It's not just the people in the labs and the big tech firms. It's not just thousands of people. Hundreds of millions are participating in this and are training the models as we speak. We'll get to this here, what we can do about it. But I really want to play two videos here by two people who've researched transhumanism, AI, and this development for many, many years and are in the thick of it. And one is saying fundamentally that we have passed that threshold of singularity, and the other is saying not quite yet, but we're close. And having two opposing opinions on this isn't really a reassuring thing. We shouldn't talk about whether, a car can drive more than 100 miles and that being this huge question mark. We should be able, when we are developing technology, to 100% say what stage we're in, what's the next stage, and what's the next stage. We can't do that anymore with AI. We're so far past that, and that is extremely dangerous in my view. But let's listen to Mark Jeftovic here as he's sharing something important, I think.
Singularity has different definitions for different people. I look at the Ray Kurzweil definition of it, which is almost like a technological rapture like moment when sort of, Skynet in the Terminator movie, like everything switches on and everything changes for humanity in that instant.
We'll be able to multiply our intelligence about 1 million-fold by 2045, and that's what we call the singularity. It's not just becoming capable of being one human, but really have a knowledge of basically 1 million humans by 2045. And that's so difficult that we borrow this metaphor from physics and call it a singularity.
What I've been realizing lately comes on the heels of another piece I wrote about the speed of change and the phenomena of future shock, from the old Alvin Toffler book, that future shock was accelerating and causing mass formation psychosis throughout humanity. And part of that article, I said that, in effect, the singularity has already happened because what is happening now is we created code that is now creating code. So now the software is programming software, and in my mind, that is a kind of Rubicon moment. We may not have gone completely vertical in terms of the graph where hyper-intelligent, self-aware technology has infused all aspects of humanity. What I'm saying is we've at least crossed this event horizon where predictability has kind of gone out the window, and the mantle of technology is no longer, or is in the process of no longer being driven by humans. It's going to be increasingly driven by technology. So the code is going to start coding more code than humans can generate.
Sorry, I think this is significant to listen to. These are folks that, he's been in that sector for over 30 years, 40 years, really. So someone who's really been studying the development of technology, saying that is, I think, something we should listen to. There is I want to say probably 90 to 95% of the population, there is a level of ignorance and naivete around AI that's like, okay, if we just don't use certain social media tools or whatever, we're not interacting with it. It's so far beyond that. There's not a place on the internet where you are not interacting with AI and it's not interacting with you. Whether you know it or not is completely besides the point. We are feeding the machine every single day. If we do it and we do it with the intention of raising enough awareness, so at least we know what is happening. I do not think this train can be stopped at this point, not the way that it is right now. Consciousness, just like sort of the development of AI, is also exponential, but infinitely exponential. So consciousness knows no bounds. AI ultimately will always know some bounds, but not consciousness. So the only way for the human family to truly comprehend what moment we're in and to come to the conclusion what can be done about it is to raise our awareness, our consciousness, and our knowledge base. There is no walking away from this. There is sort of stepping to the side. There's going into maybe areas and places where there's simply less interest for the infrastructure to reach you. And it's sort of like, I do believe there is a willingness of the mainstream system to give certain people their space and let them be and live however they want to live. They're probably going to say backwards. I see that. I don't see that there's this all-encompassing necessity in the next couple decades or so to bring absolutely everybody in, but it is most certainly their intention to do it. So there's no ignoring it. There's no pretending it's not happening. As I said, it's like thinking it's 1995 or 6 and you're thinking, oh, I have nothing to do with the internet and I won't. Well, here you are and everybody does. There are certain things you literally cannot do anymore without the internet. There are certain services that you can't get without the internet. The information sphere has largely moved to the internet, so you don't have the magazines and the newspapers, or at least a variety any longer, for what it's worth. So this has happened, and this is happening too. And there's no closing our eyes. There's a different perspective. Like I said, I wanted to give you Joe Allen's perspective, who's been out there talking about and writing books. The Dark Eon is one of them. It's a really great book on the current state. He's thinking we're in a little bit of a different stage, but that is, to me, potato at this point. But let's listen to what Joe Allen has to say.
The singularity. It's the idea that technological progress will begin to increase and increase until it hits an inflection point and then basically goes vertical with exponential progress. You can't really see beyond what's going to happen after that curve. So in that sense, in the purely metaphorical sense, I can feel what the bomb thrower is tossing at us. It's blowing up in my skull. But to say that the singularity is already here, I think it stretches any commonly accepted definition of the singularity. Let's take Ray Kurzweil. Very, very simple. Kurzweil's idea, as it stands right now, as he rots before our eyes, is that by 2030, we will have artificial general intelligence, a system that can think better than any individual human on Earth. And then by 2045, we will have something like super intelligence, smarter than every human being on Earth by orders of magnitude. And at that point, as Ray Kurzweil puts it, 2045, you've hit the singularity, at which point AI is billions or trillions of times smarter than all human beings, that there is no distinction between the human and the machine. And because of nanobot swarms and holograms and everything else, there's no division between actual and virtual reality. So if the singularity is already here, nobody's noticed, but it is, I do think that everything that Mark points out in his article shows how quickly this is all moving along, so that 2 years ago to talk about agentic AI or reasoning models would have seemed like science fiction, and now it's happening, including some Chinese knockoffs. So, the spirit I agree with. We are definitely hitting this point of acceleration in which it's almost exponential, and in some technologies it is. But I would not say the singularity is here.
So you can see, and I've sort of studied this, and I am studying this on a daily basis. What I'm finding is there's zero consensus on what the current state of development is. The deeper you go into the labs and into the engineers, the curators, and like we talked about, the algorithm curators, for example, the deeper you go, the less overall 40,000 foot view you will find. They are so focused on their subtasks, so focused on their little compartmentalized things that nobody sees the big picture. There is the Elon Musks out there, the PR gurus for AI and for transhumanism. There is the Klaus Schwabs out there who sort of present the vision of what it will be, but nobody knows what stage we're in. The big problem with this is also that what people don't quite can wrap their mind around is that before AI, our perceptions created reality in the sense that you had to convince a large number of people of a concept, so we would sort of influence each other. So you would go, okay, 1,000, 100,000 people around me already live by this concept. They're already adopting, they're changing, so maybe this is not a bad idea. You know, it's kind of like how the political party system and voting works is, if you get enough crowds to a place and they all cheer, well, chances are more are going to show up because they think, well, if all of those people think it's great, maybe it is great. What AI is capable of doing is curating a sense of reality. It has nothing to do with what's happening in the world, but because it can mimic and create campaigns and create millions of social media signals and millions of videos and fake content, it can create the perception without a real human being even being involved in it. It can do that. It has those capabilities. So we see that you can now curate, design reality, and like Joe Allen said, now take into account that we will soon, or already have been, watching holograms. And we don't know, for example, I don't know that we can verify whether the Jersey drones, this huge drone spectacle of late 2024, who knows if those were real drones or whether those were holographic projections or bot swarms. We don't know that any longer. What I'm saying is, we are in the beginning stages of a hyper reality and hyper novelty, and we do not know, we can't distinguish really with certainty, right? With certainty, what is real and what isn't. So what can we do? One thing is to take off the rose-colored glasses and shed all naivete and ignorance. Nothing has ever been accomplished by just closing our eyes and pretending it's not there. No development in human history was stopped that way, not ever. So that doesn't work. Yeah, quite the opposite. Whenever we, and this is what they're counting on, right? Making it so fast, so complicated, so deep that people don't really want to study it. So you need to study it. You need to, and I don't care if you're 20 or 80, right? If you're here and you have life force in you, you need to know what you're dealing with, at least the main parameters. But then we also have to really focus on what allows us to remain in tune, what allows us to remain conscious, and gives us 100% power over our decisions, because this is where AI is so good. It's taking over the decision-making process. And this is where we get into some of the things that I believe need to be done. Excuse me, this is what we're looking at here. For example, the mental resilience and cognitive sovereignty. What's gone missing? Attention span, right? Attention span has gone down, 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 down. Right now, I do believe there's quite a few animals that have a longer attention span than the average human being. That's not an exaggeration. That is actually the truth. So we need to train that. People are saying that, you know, when they start reading a book, after a few pages, they can't focus any longer. You know, that it's like, okay, train yourself. This is training. This is just reestablishing the neural pathways, reconnecting the brain hemispheres, putting focus. So set a timer and read for 15 minutes straight. And then, you know, write a little short essay about what you've read. So you have active comprehension skills, not just watching a video and remembering it for a few minutes, but actively doing things. So you're reading, you're actively reading, you're imagining, you're interpreting and analyzing, and then you are repeating or at least summarizing what you've read. 15 minutes, and then write a short summary. Set a timer for 30 minutes. I mean, this applies to a lot of people and should be done, literally. Then, of course, getting a little wiser on digital identity and data defense. Now, I'll be quite honest with you, there is no way to do that fully. You can't fully protect your data online, but you can protect it from a lot of entities online, right? You're not going to get away with protecting it from agencies like the NSA and the Mossad. I don't agree that that's possible, or at least we don't have those capabilities. But you can make sure that your data is not stolen and used by any old guy that comes along with a new AI. And the VPN tools, the data protection tools, make sure that you do your research on this and what is important to you. I think this is a highly important subject. Human-centric networks, like we always talk about, local communities, human interactions, sitting down for dinner, as simple as literally getting together for dinner, making it a point to visit with friends and family, visit, not FaceTime. And it's a two-edged sword. It's beautiful that we can FaceTime and video call with people all around the world that we usually wouldn't see, but let's make it a point to get together with the people that are important to us, hug, have human touch, and keep that interaction intact. And then this is one that most people, like I said a little earlier, don't want to do. AI literate skill sets. You have to, even if you don't want to use the AI tools, at least know that they exist, know what they can do, so that you might be looking at AI created content. Know that your favorite YouTube channel is fully AI run, that there's not a human being recording anything, that even the voice isn't of a human being, but it's a synthetic voice that sounds like the voice of an AI, right? Look out for that. If you really value human creation, that is important. Energetic and biological autonomy. I mean, this is where we get into from the things that are known to the public, the EMFs, the towers, the electromagnetic radiation in all places now, how we can protect ourselves against it. That's part of the FLFE technology. It's a huge EMF protection. I believe one of the most comprehensive ones out there in a high consciousness field. But also, what is biological autonomy? We are looking actually for, and we've talked about this in our locals community. We're looking for people who are willing to dive deep into the material that people like Sabrina Wallace put out, because it is so complex. And she has the ability to really explain in technical terms what is happening, but for most people that's way too technical, and there are so many terms and acronyms in there that people don't know. But in a nutshell, she's explaining how our biofield and our biology, our bodies have been hacked for decades now, and how we can protect ourselves against it. So this is a highly important field, and a part of the AI transhumanism field. So if there's anyone out there who has studied Sabrina Wallace, not just regurgitated sort of the information, but broken it down into simpler ways for the public to understand, who's maybe not as tech savvy, we're looking for those folks who are willing to break it down or have blogs or websites that explain it simpler. And we're happy to talk to them or share that information here, because it is so important. And then, of course, philosophical and spiritual grounding, right? There's a few aspects that will allow us moving forward to distinguish between real consciousness and synthetic imitation of consciousness, which is where this is headed, right? For that, we have to be in our physical bodies. We have to be somewhat grounded. Our bodies have to be in a certain state of balance. If they're constantly out of balance, it's hard for us to access higher consciousness. So have those practices. Touch the soil. Be outside in your bare feet. Lay on the ground. Literal grounding, right? Be in natural environments. Sort of tune yourself to the circadian rhythms and to the rhythms of nature more, bodies of water, stuff like that. But also philosophical grounding, where study, learn, read, pray, meditate outside of the internet and outside of internet guided things. Contemplate on timeless wisdom, timeless concepts. Just meditate on those, contemplate on those, so you have an identity, if you will, or authenticity outside of the digital world. And for some of us, the way that these things are going, we might have a few years left here. We might walk out on this, right? We just might walk out on a fully synthesized AI synthetic world. That's entirely possible. We don't know yet, because, like I said from the get-go here, we simply don't know what stage we're in. what I'm hearing is that now, more often than not, in tests and trials and experiments, the engineers simply do not know how the AI got there. Now imagine that. Imagine that you have a technology that gives you answers and solutions that you've never heard before from another human being, and you don't know how it got there. You don't know the reasoning. And when you ask it to give you the path of reasoning, it gives you a path. But when you look into the logs, when you look into the backdoors kind of deal, you see that there was a different path, but you can't fully understand it. And nobody's willing to pull the plug. That's the problem, right? Everybody's racing. This is the arms race of our time. I don't believe nuclear, and people doubt that there was a nuclear arms race, but I don't think any weapons race has anything on what is happening now. This is full dominance, full spectrum dominance, and there is no reason to believe. Tell me the tool, the technology, or the weapon that was created and wasn't used. They've been all used at some point. So the next war, or probably already current wars, but the next big war will be AI against AI. That is, you don't have to be spiritually inclined in any way. You don't have to be a prophet for that. This is not prophecy. This is just understanding historic data. And we won't know why and how the actions that will be taken. That's the problem. You might know why a crazy general used a weapon on a battlefield that he wasn't supposed to, or why a president pushed a button that nobody you might be able to talk to the guy and actually say, what drove you crazy, or what made you do that? How will you do that when you don't understand how an AI comes to the decision point? So there's only, and this, I will say this and I will repeat this for as long as I have to, there is only one solution to this, and that is consciousness. That's the only exponential solution. I won't call it a weapon because it isn't a weapon. It's a solution that can counteract this, but it has to be on a significant scale, a unified field of consciousness in which cannot be penetrated by AI. But we're nowhere near that because people are not willing to put in the time and the energy and the structured discipline work that it requires. We're in a consumption society state where everybody's just consuming information. Not everybody, but most people are consuming information and not doing anything significant with it. And this is where discipline comes in. This is where direction comes in, intention comes in. Consciousness needs to be directed. It's an active work. It's not something that just happens. By just wishing something, nothing happens by just wishing. Hoping, nothing happens by hoping. Absolutely nothing. Hope is a fantastic survival tool. It's the most powerful survival tool. When there is no logical reason why someone should survive, hope is what overrides the doubt, the fear, and allows people to make it out of impossible situations. So hope has an elemental place in our story, but it is not a strategy of any kind beyond survival. Not at all. It is actually the killer. The killer. Hope is the killer of at least baby step action, of taking intention to the next level, of actively working on yourself and raising your consciousness. Hope does nothing for that. It just keeps people stagnant. So like I say, great for survival, really bad for everything else. Not a strategy. And that's what we need. And, I see the 2045 projection by Ray Kurzweil. From what I can see, and I'm not an expert, I'm just someone who's really interested and has been researching a lot. 2045 is not even, that is way too far away from what we're observing. Singularity and what they're describing as singularity, we're maybe a few short years away from that. Definitely not 20 years. Most definitely not. So this is of the essence. we can almost completely forget the people that are in their teens, some in their early 20s maybe, but we can pretty much count out that generation. They'll just fall for it, or they are in it hook, line, and sinker, and you can't blame them unless they had some really strong guidance and really conscious parents, and they showed them a different way of being and creating. There's no chance you get them. It's going to be up to the generations that have or remember a life before the internet, remember a life before AI, and have actually enjoyed it. Those are the people who can create a counter movement, with notable exceptions. There will be some great children and teenagers and whatnot, but I'm talking about the general. So, this is you can sit by it idly and passively and be engulfed by it, and you will be. If you don't make any conscious choices, it will be decided for you. There will not be an urban area. There will not be a city where people will be able to live outside of it. There's just no way. Everything interconnected, everything fully aligned with the smart grid and with the AI grid. You won't be able to live in a city and not be a part of it. That's not pessimistic. That is a fact. I'm willing to sign it today, and I would put a huge wager on this, because that is a fact. That's how all cities are going right now. Some might deviate in the future, but right now that's where they're all going. So all of these things need to be studied by more than just a few researchers. They need to be studied by everybody who has an interest. So everybody needs to go and sit down and learn about this stuff, realize what it is, how it operates, and then make a choice whether you want to be a part of it or not. It's not for me to judge. Some people will love it. For them, it will be wonderful. That's what they always wanted. Again, what we're about is creating enough awareness so we can have informed consent. That's it. That's the bottom line. Nobody has the right to tell anyone else. On the flip side of this, no one can force anyone who doesn't want to be a part of it to be a part of it. And they don't have the right either. They're going to try, but they don't have the right. So those are the last stands of freedom that we're we need to preserve. We'll stay on this subject continually. The research is mind-blowing. Imagine, and I'm gonna stop, and because I've been on a rant here, but I'm gonna stop in a moment. But imagine the implications of everything that we're talking about here. Imagine it's 1960. Imagine your mother, grandmother, your ancestors, and you tell them that they can speak 2 sentences into a device, and within a few seconds, that device will have turned those 2 sentences into a photograph that depicts exactly what was described in those 2 sentences. And there's no human being involved, and it does that. And trying to keep all that in mind and now go back and read scripture. What are we really talking about? Can you imagine now that with what has transpired in the AI world and what we're now beginning to comprehend, that everything that we've been taught and everything we've been taught about sort of the witchcraft and the old magic stuff, that a lot of this was ancient AI, already been around different times. Can you imagine if somebody were to wake up from a coma that started in even 2010 and wakes up today, and you show them those tools? It's unbelievable. And this isn't even talking about an aspect that would include, have we opened this portal into a different dimension that allows for entities to go into the AI and influence it, or be it, or give it a voice through that? Is it the digital Ouija board, Ouija board? Is it? We don't know. We can speculate on that. There's, sometimes things come out of the thing where you go, well, there's no other explanation, but that's where we're at. That's the moment that we're in. And we can't close our eyes. We can't just ignore it. It won't go away. It is here to stay for now. And if we're not the ones who are willing to go the extra mile, and if we're not the ones who are willing to be the best that we can possibly be, then who will? Who will? All right, my friends. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. I also wanted to say that lately the emails and the comments about people's experiences with FLFE in the high consciousness field, which is in the sea of technologies that I'm so worried about. It's the one beautiful technology that it's a spiritual technology that we see serves so many people. Just wanted to thank you all for continually updating us on your progress, what's happening in your world, how your life has been positively impacted, how your spiritual practices, your relationships, your health, it's incredible. So, this is just a thank you. And everybody who wants to learn more or give it a try, highconsciousnessfield.com. You can do a free trial, no credit card, no nothing, no subscription, just a gift, but it's a game changer. All right, my friends, thank you so much. We love you. We appreciate you. And we will be back with you again very, very soon.
Listen, right now you could be only a few clicks away from experiencing something amazing, something that has changed thousands of lives all over the world. I'm talking about a high consciousness field similar to those at pilgrimage sites and sacred places. It's where people go to heal, to connect, and to become the best possible version of themselves. With FLFE, you can bring such a high consciousness field into your home right now. It's a spiritual quantum technology based on the work of Nikola Tesla. Better sleep, more energy, greater well-being, improved finances, electrosmog mitigation. These are only some of the things people on the FLFE service are experiencing. Try it now for 15 days completely free of charge, no credit card needed. Just click on a link down below to start your free, no strings attached FLFE trial right now.